But our big story tonight, keep them guessing. These were strong words from the army chief on how India may react to Pakistan in the event that there is another terror attack.
Let me tell you, Balakot has been reactivated. It's been reactivated by Pakistan. What else?
When it has been?
Very recently.
Sir,
so obviously that shows that Balakot was affected. It had been damaged and destroyed, and that is why people had got away from there. It has now been reactivated, which just goes to highlight that yes, some action had been taken by the Indian Air Force at Balakot, and now they've got the people back there. Why tell him what we are going to do? Why not keep him guessing? So why say repeat? Why not something beyond that?
Well, any response of the army will be directly associated with a terror attack from Pakistan. That's what the primary message of the army and our sources in the security establishment actually are. At this juncture, they are concerned about the presence of between 450 to 500 terrorists at terrorist launchpads and also terrorist training facilities like Balakot. Now, let me give you an idea of the areas we are talking about. We're talking about Kargil, we're talking about Gurez, we're talking about Machil, the Keren sector, Tangdar, Uri. These are all areas, and all around these areas on the other side of the line of control, other side of the fence, is where these forward posts have been created. These terror training camps have been created. Further afield in, for example, the Balakot area is where you've got that Jaish-e-Mohammed terror camp, which the Indian Air Force had attacked earlier on, has reopened. It's working once again. So the points being mentioned by the army now, the reason they are concerned is because of the numbers of between 450 to 500 puts this at double the numbers of the last 3 years. So what would the response be? Now, I need to clarify that a response at this juncture isn't a response for the Balakot camp having opened up. The response is if there is a terror attack that takes place. And if there is a terror attack based on a heightened sense of from intelligence sources at this juncture that something could in fact take place, then our sources telling us our response will be at any level and at any range. And the final key point that's been mentioned is that the 15 Corps, that's the large army formation in Srinagar, our sources remind us, is not just a defensive formation which deals with counter-terrorism on the ground in the Kashmir Valley. It's very much an offensive force as well, and if necessary could attack. So the question is, when India talks about attacking, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about Gilgit, Baltistan, other areas far afield in Pakistan occupied Kashmir? At this juncture, there is no clarity other than a few political statements, but what seems to be increasingly clear, 2 points. Number one, an enhanced security threat, and secondly, the sense that if there is an attack that takes place, a terrorist event, India will respond speedily. Well, the statements made by the army chief that this particular camp has been reactivated. Now, we are told that it was reactivated just 4 days back is when information came in of it being reactivated, is significant. This is the camp that was actually attacked. It was attacked on the 26th of February by the Indian Air Force. And it was partly hit, partly destroyed, but it is now active once again. Now, let me give you an idea of the areas which were struck. This particular structure was the structure right in the north of the facility. It's referred to as the Mujahid Hostel. Now, this was struck by 3 spice bombs, Israeli weapons using very sophisticated global positioning systems to guide them. Now, if we take the next image, you'll actually see the marks where the 3 bombs actually struck. However, the bombs have been described to me as being penetrator weapons. They did not destroy the entire structure, and therefore the entire camp was not destroyed. There's been an intense debate on whether or not the Indian Air Force actually struck the target in the manner that they did, but it's quite clear that this camp was not operational for an extended period of time. The army chief mentioned this as well today, where he said that it's only now in the last little while starting to be reactivated. And if we look at the entire line of control all the way across, you can see the line of control over there. This entire area is where we've got a lot of the terror launch pads that we've been talking about active, 450 to 500 terrorists in these terror launch pads. And further afield, of course, is Balakot that you can see over there. That's where India struck. But it's these areas over here, Poonch, Uri, Machil, Tangdar, Gurez, not necessarily Kargil, but areas close by, where there is that threat of infiltration? Well, we've got a great panel tonight, but first off, I'd like to just introduce Lieutenant General DS Hooda, the former Northern Army commander, the man who had planned and carried out the surgical strikes. Thanks, General, very much for joining us. When the Army say that there are 450 to 500 terrorists at terror launchpads or terror training camps quite close to the line of control, in terms of numbers, how substantial is it? Is it much larger than what we've seen in the past?
Vishnu, it is. It is much larger than what we've seen in the past. But I don't think we should be surprised, because if you recall, the first statement that was given by the Pak Army chief after 5th August was that we will go to any extent, to help out what's happening in Kashmir. And therefore, they will make an attempt to push in terrorists. They will make an attempt to show that Kashmir Valley is on the boil, there are incidents taking place, internationalize the whole issue. To me, Vishnu, the key point is, how far is Pakistan wanting to push the envelope with India? Because, it's a different attitude that the Indian government has shown in the recent past. We've seen what happens when, two countries, almost one air attack versus another attempted counter air attack. Will Pakistan be willing to push the envelope beyond a particular point?
General, the other point that's come up, apparently 60 terrorists have entered India over the last 2 months, not just the line of control, but the international border areas as sector as well. Again, in terms of numbers, in a period of 2 months, how significant is this?
Vishnu, this is very significant, because I remember in my time, the annual infiltration would vary anything between 60 to about 100, 110, plus minus 10, 12%. So if you have about 50 to 60 entering in the last 2 months, then I think it's a matter of great concern. Vishnu, if you recall, every major terror incident that has happened, Pathankot, Uri, Nagrota, has been by a group of infiltrators who have come in directly from Pakistan for this purpose. And therefore, 50, 60 have come inside. One, we need to be extremely careful about what they could do. And secondly, and I know the Army and the BSF is doing a great job at the borders, but I think we'll need to revisit our counter-infiltration posture and see how we can stop these people from coming in. Because to me, one big factor which will keep peace in Kashmir is if you don't have a major terror attack now, because that has all kinds of implications, not only for Kashmir. I think it has reverberations in the rest of India if you're going to have a major terror attack, and what it will do for, how India and Pakistan will respond is going to be huge. So I think this, if the figures are correct, 50 to 60 infiltrators in the last 2 months, I think we'll need to be very, very careful.
Yeah. One addition, and it's new at least, I've not heard of it before. The Punjab police yesterday said that small drones were being used to ferry across supplies, by which parts of guns or perhaps cartridges. These really cannot be detected. They can be visually spotted sometimes, but we can't use conventional military means to detect them. Is this a huge concern, sir?
It is, Vishnu, and we have seen what's happening with the use of drones and autonomous technology. Yemen versus Saudi Arabia and the attack on oil fields. I know that was a much more sophisticated drone, but simple drones have been carrying drugs across the fence, and that has been known to us, for quite some time. And therefore, for them to carry across weapon parts or explosives is something that, and that's why I say, I think we need to relook and revisit our posture on the borders, our counter-infiltration techniques. There is a much smarter fence which has been in the offing for a very long time. I think we need to put that in place very, very quickly. because you will have these new threats coming in, Vishnu, and they need to be tackled, with a different mindset.
General, when the government talks about having all sorts of new options or options it's not really explored in the recent past with it in terms of striking at POK beyond striking at terror launch pads just across the fence, what really are we hinting at? Are we hinting at Baltistan, the Skardu area, the Gilgit area, and if so, realistically, can we achieve anything substantive, or do you believe that there is more rhetoric, something not matched by sustainable military capability?
See, Vishnu, I think we need to think these things through. So, if you're talking about POK and Gilgit-Baltistan, it's an area 85,000 square kilometers, and it's not merely the occupation of an area. It's the people who also live in that area. And what exactly will their response be to, a major sort of military action in those areas? So the Army, the Air Force, the Navy is prepared for these kind of actions. But I think the political objectives must be clear. So my sense right now is, we're talking about these things, whether we've thought them through carefully. You tell the military to do something, and as the chief rightly said, we need directions, and we will go in. Have we thought through all the challenges that will come with it? Are we relying purely on the military option? Even the governor of J&K said, there's too much talk about the military option as far as these things are concerned, and maybe there are better ways. If we look at integrating the erstwhile state of Jammu Kashmir. So I think we need to be a little calm on this and think these things through properly before talking about it.
General, thanks very much, General Hooda, for being with us. With me in the studio, my former colleague, Colonel Ajay Shukla, the former Army Chief General Shankar Roy Chaudhary joins us from Kolkata, Deshrata Nigam with us, and Jayadev Ranade, the former RAW Additional Secretary at the Cabinet Secretariat. Ajay, do you believe it's overreach when political leaders say that we need to target POK beyond just across the fence? You've had Jitendra Singh, you've had Rajnath Singh, you've had Amit Shah making fairly expansive statements. There's a political objective over here, obviously, but militarily, is this at all sustainable?
Well, in terms of the objective, let us remember that the Army Chief today is talking about Balakot being reactivated. Does that mean that on the 26th of February, the airstrikes that were launched at Balakot, the lesson that was taught to Pakistan has not learnt the lesson as yet. That airstrike was completely in vain. It has not sent a message. It has not deterred Pakistan.
That's an important point.
Balakot is back in action again. One can keep talking about striking targets, but like General Hooda just said, one has to think through what the possible responses from Pakistan would be, what our responses to those responses would be, how far things could escalate, and at the end of it, whether you have achieved anything at all or not. Today, the Army Chief seems to be saying that the strikes that the Air Force Chief masterminded have not achieved anything. Balakot is back in action again. I just don't get it.
It's an important point. I think the larger objective of Balakot, going well beyond how much we hit, how successful we were, was to send a message to the Pakistani deep state that if you hit us, we will hit you, and we will hit you deep. Today, if we find that Balakot is reactive, would it not be fair to argue, as Ajay suggests, seems to be doing, that perhaps that deeper message has not gone through, certainly not in the way that we would have wanted it to?
No, I don't agree to that. At that particular time, there was a specific response to a specific situation, and Pakistan did learn its lessons. Now, this Pakistan is again reactivating it in response to abrogation of Article 370. Here, the two things are different now. This is specifically in response to our internal matter, and they're trying to interfere. So, you will find, obviously, we don't know what kind of a response would be there, but the Army Chief has made it very clear we may go beyond Balakot.
Yes.
Therefore, you cannot say that they did not learn their lesson. Now, this is a new situation which has developed, which the Pakistan Prime Minister said that Pulwama type of incidents can happen. Unless and until you are in touch with terrorists, you cannot predict such a thing. So that there is a clear nexus between terrorists and the Pakistani government out there, and the army chief has also been very rhetorical. Their defense ministers have also been very rhetorical, and therefore, the response this time would be or could be more substantive and more lethal.
Mr. Ranade, how do you assess two points over here? Firstly, in the last 2 months, apparently 60 terrorists have managed to come across. The potential of them lying in wait to strike at an opportunity of their choosing. And secondly, the fact that you've got 450 to 500 terrorists in terror camps, which I'm told is the largest number in at least 3 years, seems to indicate that the terror setup, as it were, in Pakistan is working around the clock to try and attempt to do something against us. Your views on this?
I think it's what you're saying is it's very clear that Pakistan has not given up its agenda as far as creating mayhem in J&K and maybe other parts of India by using terrorists. The fact that they have so many terrorists in the camps, which has been said by quite a few people, I think indicates that the terror infrastructure or the terror support that they used to bank on within India has probably diminished by now. There would be still some elements, but I think it's diminished. Therefore, they need to push in more. Also, the safeguards at the border may be tighter. So, therefore, we are seeing more terrorists kept there in order that some of them at least will get through. But if I can add 2 more comments, I think the fact that the army chief made this statement is very significant. I wouldn't look at it just as a warning about Balakot. I would look at it as a warning from the army chief, which is a very high ranking official in the government of India, about a possibility of an imminent attack or an impending attack. Second, he has pinpointed the reactivation of Balakot. It's something that the Pakistani government knows or can check out. So he's actually put it on the line that we know what's going on there for them to check. And third, the fact that he has made this statement now when both our Prime Minister and their Prime Minister are about to speak at the UN. I think to make it at this point in time, it's also a signal to the rest of the world that Pakistan has not mended its ways and this is what it's doing. Go and check it out if you like. So I think there is a deeper message here than just looking at it from the point of view of a terror strike and a counter strike.
Okay. General Roy Chaudhary, there has always been a sense in our political leadership, certainly in the last 5 years, maybe even before that, in the UPA times, that you could right size a war, a conflict, that you could sort of do something and limit it to Kashmir, that we've had the experience of Kargil. If we were to attack them, we do it again. We had our surgical strikes, we had the Balakot strikes, we managed to keep things in check. But in terms of the rhetoric and what we are suggesting now that we may do if there is another terrorist attack on our soil, seems that India may be willing to go much further. Is there a real risk that if we do expand our objectives militarily, there could be all-out war between India and Pakistan to nuclear armed nations? General Roy Chaudhary, can you hear me, sir?
Oh, you're talking to me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I didn't realize that. Well, actually, in my view, Balakot has now become a code word. A code word for a certain type of operation which India can launch at will. That means you cross the line of control. If necessary, you cross the international border also, as happened during Balakot, and you attack and destroy certain selective targets. So I think we will, when you say Balakot, it means that you can launch attacks across a line of control. And so if there is a buildup of terrorists, the old principle, time and place of your choosing, you work out the details and you launch your attack on a selected target. You've done it once, you've crossed the border with Air Force, you cross the border now with some other, or whatever the plan is. I'm not going to go into the plan, but Balakot now categorizes a certain type of operation where the Indian armed forces, Air Force, Army in this case, since we are talking about J&K, it's that we, if necessary, we will go across the line of control and we will hit selected targets at places, selected places of our own choosing. I think that is the meaning that should be read into the word Balakot, which is now a code word for a certain type of operation which India has carried out, and India is signaling that we can and will carry out should it become necessary.
Okay. Now, all of this is being played out at a time when the Prime Minister is in the United States. He's going to speak at the United Nations General Assembly. India would be backing for support, certainly political support from the United States as both countries fight against terror. This came up repeatedly in what took place in the Howdy Modi event yesterday in Houston. Let's listen into what both leaders, Trump and Modi, had to say on the battle, the fight against terrorism.
अमेरिका में 9/11 हो या मुंबई में 26/11 हो, उसके साजिशकर्ता कहां पाए जाते हैं? साथियों, अब समय आ गया है कि आतंकवाद के खिलाफ और आतंकवाद को बढ़ावा देने वालों के खिलाफ निर्णायक लड़ाई लड़ी जाए.
We stand proudly in defense of liberty, and we are committed to protecting innocent civilians from the threat of radical Islamic terrorism. Both India and the United States also understand that to keep our communities safe, we must protect our borders. Border security is vital to the United States. Border security is vital to India. We understand that.
All right, so both leaders speaking about border security, the context of border security, and what Trump said, diametrically different to border security over here, but I think security and coming together, fighting terrorism, a common theme. Would Prime Minister Modi be looking to use this occasion in the United States of convincing the United States that, look, we need to rely on you for your political assistance as we get set for something more? Can that be at all expected?
Vishnu, you would have noticed that the statements that the two leaders made on border security,
one was on Mexico and one
came
was on
from very
LOC.
different contexts. They just happened to have a coincidence of interests over there.
The word security was the common one.
Yes. And in exactly the same way, when we transpose their various interests in South Asia, we will find that Trump has a different set of interests here from the Indian interests here. Trump is looking for an exit from Afghanistan. Trump is looking for Pakistan to be wooed to play along with that and to facilitate its exit, and therefore will not support Modi beyond a point in this anti-Pakistan rhetoric. Now, will Mr. Modi raise this in the General Assembly? We are not sure. We've had reports, but we've had reports from correspondents just 2 days ago, very close to the establishment, saying that India will take a sort of a position of lofty disdain and not even mention the word Pakistan in its speech. Now, we don't know. We will only find out when Mr. Modi actually gets onto that podium. But there are different interests here between the United States and India, and they will only coincide up to a point and no further than that. So I think we'll have to fight our own battle here.
Would you agree with that interpretation, or do you, sir, believe that if you just look at what happened yesterday, that confluence in terms of the security working between the US and India is really strong, and that's been reinforced, and that works for us in the case of Pakistan?
No, the relationship between India and USA is gaining importance and strength day by day. There is no doubt about it. But I agree with Ajay that we have to primarily fight our own battle. Because diplomatically, yes, you can have support from the worldwide, which you did get while the Article 370 was abrogated and Pakistan was isolated. But as a sovereign nation, we need to fight our own battle. Our decisions on security aspect or cross-border strike will be governed by our own geostrategic interests, our own political situation in the country, and the decisive nature of our leadership, not by the what Trump says or not. And we have seen Trump changing his stance every second day. So therefore, we are very clear on Pakistan, and USA may have its compulsion so far as Afghanistan is concerned, but you look what Taliban said with respect to Kashmir. Don't link the two issues. So that's also very important. You can utilize that aspect so far as Taliban is concerned with respect to Afghanistan exit. So I think India has got its policy very clear. This government is very clear in its approach. Yes, you need support from the international committee, which we have got in the past, and I am sure in view of the Pakistan being the hub of terrorism, the world knows about it. India, I think, will be able to muster that support.
Okay. One last question to you, sir, and I just want to come back to our own security at home running into the festive season. What I'm told quite clearly is that the nature of the threat is far more substantive than the alerts which happen every year this time of the year. No, this is far more substantive is what I'm told. Ingenious means of transporting weaponry, new techniques used by terrorists, the way they communicate, the way they are able to actually enter even during winter. Are we seeing a much better trained, much more determined terrorist attempting to cross over? This use of the drones, it's almost science fiction. It would have been a few years back to carry weapons.
Yes, in fact, I think they are more determined. I don't know about better trained, but they are certainly more determined. They are using more technology in communications, and the drones is a new feature in the sense of for transporting weapons, but it's not a surprise. I also feel that intelligence is playing a bigger role here in securing us. And if I may just get back to the point that you made about the confluence of interest between the US and us, I think while at Howdy Modi maybe there was an implied confluence when he spoke about radical Islam, but maybe when they were talking about the borders it was different. But these discussions are not held in the UN General Assembly. They are held between the US and us, and I think we have a fairly good cooperation going already. So I expect a robust security system in place here.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us.